Well, Anastasia, these are live pictures from the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court. Any minute now, court proceedings will get underway, and the presiding magistrate will then hand down his judgment in the bail application of the 5 accused that have been applying for bail for allegedly aiding and abetting the escape of a convicted Facebook rapist and murderer, Thabo Bester. The courtroom quite packed here this afternoon. The family of Thabo Bester is amongst the family members that have arrived here. You would have seen a bit earlier on his mom, who takes the front row here, lighting some candles outside the court this morning. She's saying that she's praying that this court will come to a decision that would be favourable for them. You would know that over the past few proceedings, they've been here calling for the accused not to be granted bail. We'll certainly hear in the next couple of moments which way that will go. You'll also see Thabo Bester's aunt, Mampopi, was also taken the second row seat here, as well as members of the Bloemfontein Celtic Supporters Club. You'd recall that was one of the aspects that was widely canvassed inside this courtroom when the lawyers that were representing the accused pointed out to the fact that, the investigating officer putting as one of the reasons why he believed that those who had been applying for bail, should they be granted bail by this court, it would cause some kind of, community unrest. In just a few moments, if you could stay with me, Anastasia, I see some of the police officers are coming from the holding cells at this point. I guess in the next few moments, the 5 accused who are applying for bail, you'd recall that is Sinohe Matsware, as well as Teboho Dipulo, as well as Buti Masukela and Teo Mahota, and also Anastasia Janssen. Speaking about Anastasia Janssen, her family is also inside a court today, also waiting for the decision. You would see towards the second row there, Anastasia Janssen's mother is also part of those that have occupied the gallery here this morning. Also towards the back, the National Prosecuting Authority has also arrived, the spokesperson for the NPA. You would recall, of course, that the state has been opposing the bail application of these 5 accused, and we'll certainly here take a look towards that direction there. You also see some of the lawyers representing the accused have also arrived. So any moment now, we're expecting the presiding magistrate to come in and tell us that Kagisho Mururi is the first legal counsel who is sitting there. He's representing accused number 1 and accused number 7. That would be Sinohe Matsware, as well as Teo Mahota, and Masilo Kwenana, who is just seated next to him, is representing Buti Masukela, who is one of the applicants in this particular matter. And the expectation, of course, is that whichever way that this court does decide, would certainly evoke some kind of emotion in this community. But of course, the court would need to decide on the basis of what has been placed before it. Remember, the state, in opposing this bail application, had brought in an investigating officer who testified about the alleged involvement of these 5 accused in aiding and abetting the escape of Thabo Bester, and outlining alleged transactions that had been made to some of those who will know their fate pertaining to bail here this morning, outlining their alleged involvement. Of course, the defense trying to poke holes into the testimony of the investigating officer, trying to paint him as unreliable and not having done his investigations thoroughly. One of the issues that was raised was that the investigating officer had indicated that accused number 1, Sinohe Matsware, had travelled to Lesotho about 16 times, but it then turned out in cross-examination that it had in fact been 4 times, because when he left the country travelling to Lesotho, you would get 2 stamps on the passport as you exit, and as you return you would get another 2 stamps, that making it 4. And on the other aspect, which I had spoken to with my colleagues on the previous program, pertaining to the defense trying to indicate that their clients are not flight risks. Their clients, do not. I see some movement coming from this direction. Let me see. Yes, there they are. Live pictures here. Sinohe Matsware, the first applicant walking into the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court. The second applicant, that would be Mr. Thabo Bester. The third applicant, Buti Masugela. The fourth applicant, Deheo Mahotsa. And the fifth applicant being Anastasia Janssen. We're expecting any minute now the proceedings to get underway. These five applicants will this morning, or this afternoon, I beg your pardon, know what their fate is pertaining to those bail applications which they have brought. And certainly here towards the left would be families on both sides, I guess, which are hoping, often turning back to have brief conversations with their family members, and they would certainly indicate or express whatever their emotions are, whichever decision is made by this court. So these are the live pictures. The five applicants have now come inside the courtroom, being brought up from the holding cells. They will certainly know what their fate is this morning pertaining to the bail application, as it were. The state, again, opposing this bail application. The defense really trying to point to that the state's case is weak. That's what they say. And you would recall, with regard to what the investigating officer had said with regard to the first applicant, him basically indicating that plus minus 150,000 rand, according to his testimony, is what was paid to Sinohe Matsware. And his lawyers saying they will then at a later stage, now this being in the trial court, indicate or state exactly what those monies were for. The second applicant being Thabo Bester. You would recall that the investigating officer saying that he had approached police, made some sort of confession about his alleged involvement in that of his colleagues, but the defense poking holes into that testimony, saying in fact it is not Thabo Bester who had called police and made this confession. In fact, according to their version, it's police that had called Thabo Bester, and they then asked to see him at a mall, which is not too far from here, and that's where the arrest had been effected. Let's take a look at the third applicant, Mr. Buti Masugela, the investigating officer alleging that after the body of Thabo, I beg your pardon, Katlego Bereng had been brought onto the premises of the prison. The allegation, according to the version that was given by the investigating officer, is that he had assisted, allegedly, Mr. Sinohe Matsware to offload the corpse from the vehicle and then stored it in the workshop, according to the investigating officer. So the allegation is that his alleged involvement then would have come in at the time that the body was being offloaded. Deheo Mahotsa as well as Anastasia Janssen, the state alleging that they were the ones who allegedly opened the doors. But we saw in cross-examination there, for example, the lawyer representing Anastasia Janssen indicating that if indeed that had been so, what we now know from events that have unfolded is that Thabo Bester had been wearing a G4S uniform at the time that he had escaped. So if his client had then been opening the door, then Deheo Mahotsa as well as Anastasia Janssen would have opened the door for someone who they presumed had been a G4S employee, given the fact that he was under the guise or wearing the uniform of G4S at the time that he had escaped from the Mangaung prison. So it's expected to be a day of high emotions here today, whatever the decision may be of the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court. The legal counsel also arriving, families also here, the National Prosecuting Authority also there, and quite a large media contingent, because I think at this particular point, on the strength of what the state has brought and the defense of the five accused that you are seeing at this particular point, we will hear in just a moment. We're expecting the presiding magistrate to arrive at this court any minute now. And perhaps you'd know one of the issues that had been canvassed by the defence is that there are some personal circumstances that this court needs to take into account. You'd recall during the last sitting that we had, there was a bit of to and fro about, what exactly would then be meant by a primary caregiver. This, of course, in the court trying to establish, whether there are any children or family members then who would be disadvantaged if these 5 accused are not granted bail. But of course, the ultimate decision would be taken by this court, taking all of those factors into account. And we're expecting the presiding magistrate any minute now to make his way inside court. But these live pictures are from the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court, where judgment will be handed down in the bail application of these 5 accused who have now entered court. Sinohe Matsware, Tebo Dipulo, Buti Masukela, Teo Mahota, as well as Nastasia Janssen. We'll bring you live pictures once proceedings get underway. It's back to you in studio for now.